Welcome to the Coroner Talk Podcast. Whether you're new to the show or a longtime listener, I welcome you today, and I am so happy that you are here. I really like my listeners. I like the interaction. I like some of the emails and things that I get. We've gotten some great ratings and reviews recently, and if you can go on to your podcast directory, and leave us a rating and review, I would certainly love to read those. It does help us get found a little bit, but it really doesn't do a lot except create some social proof, so we'd love to hear what you have to say. If you have something specific you want to tell me, send me an email, coronertalk.com, click on contact. Let me know what you think. Are we doing it right? Are we doing it wrong? What can we do better for you? And I say we because it's not just me doing this. We do have a team that kind of does some things to help all of you become better investigators. And when we started this podcast in 2014, think about that. In 2014, our goal was to help you become a better investigator. And I like to think that we've done that, not only from the podcast, but also online training, classroom training, things like that. I hope that we've had our part in helping you become a better investigator. And if you're not in investigations, maybe you're in a supporting role. Maybe you're a fireman, police. Maybe you're somebody who's just a voyeur of the field. Hopefully, we have helped you in your career and your endeavor as well. At Teacher's Heart, that's what I really enjoy doing. So, without any further delay and discussion in that, of course, let's get into today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about scene arrival and first contact. You've gotten the call. What are some things that you do now? What are some things you need to look for? Talking to witnesses, things like that. What are some first contacts you need to do? Now, remember, of course, this is part of a multi-hour online infant death investigation course. You can find the link to that course in the show notes, and maybe you'll want to go check that course out. You might want to subscribe to the course as a whole, or you just want to have this training here. Either way, it's fine. I just want to give you, of course, that option if you're like, well, I love this podcast, but where can I find more information? Where can I get the full training? Well, that's going to be in the show notes down below. And of course, you can go to ditacademy.org, click on online learning, and find I think 35 or 36 online courses there waiting for you. So without any further delay, let's get into today's show.
Adjust your earbuds, turn up those speakers, and hang on. It's now time for this week's featured conversation.
All right, now let's talk about the initial scene arrival. Okay, this is when you, as the investigator, whichever side you're on, whether it be the police or the coroner or ME, you're the investigator, get on the scene. This is your initial arrival. There's some things that you need to do right off. Let's talk about that. Identify the lead investigator at the scene and present your identification. Now, if you're the coroner or medical examiner, you need to find out who the lead investigator is. If you are the lead investigator, then you know that, and you just need to then introduce yourself or find out who is the first officers on the scene and who you're getting the initial information from. Now, you probably know them. You work with them. But the point is, if you're the lead investigator, then you're there, find out who was the first on the scene and start gathering information. If you're the coroner medical examiner, then when you get there, you need to find out who the lead is so that you can start gathering information from them. Then identify other important personnel that's on the scene or was on the scene. Is paramedics still there? Have they hauled the baby? Are they still on the scene or not? Are they at the hospital? What about ER staff, emergency room staff, social workers, caregivers, neighbors? Who else was on the scene either currently or have been there and left? You as an investigator, regardless of which side of the field you play on, you as an investigator are going to want to know who these people are because you're going to need and want to talk to them. Of course, explain your role in the investigation to whoever may need to know that. Most people on the police and coroner ME side work together. You don't need to explain your role. But if you're dealing with a social worker, if you're dealing with a neighbor or a family member that doesn't live in the home or something, maybe you need to explain your role. Okay, and if that's necessary, then you do that. Identify and document the first initial officials to the scene. Identify the people that got there first. The first responding officer is always your most important officer because they've seen the scene prior to it being disturbed or messed up in any way.
And then, of course, determine if the scene is safe. Is there any environmental hazards that you need to deal with? Be sure the scene or scenes are secure. Now, we can have 2 scenes. We can have 3 scenes sometimes. We can have different locations. There are 2 main ways that a scene is compromised. One is no or delayed notification. So in this situation, a child maybe is taken away from the home, ambulance call for difficulty breathing. And so the ambulance gets there, they take the child away. They may even fly the child to a university hospital somewhere. The child dies. They die within a couple of days, but of course then the original location started in your county. Most states have remand laws. It goes back to the point of origin. Some do not. But let's say, you have this and now there's a delay. Let's say you don't remand it back. Well, now you're in an area, university hospital, where a child has died. Your original point of location is 2 counties away, but now you're having to work this case. Either way, your notification is delayed. The child had difficulty breathing. There was something going on with this child 2 days ago, or maybe 9 hours ago. But regardless, the child, you don't know about it. And so everything at the scene has been messed up. And then the other thing is the first responding officer or the ambulance that knows the child is dead doesn't stay at the scene. And I talk badly a lot about paramedics and hauling dead babies. There's protocols in place in some places that they can't get a sustainable heartbeat within 20 minutes. They don't leave the scene regardless of the age of the patient. I think that's a great protocol. Many other paramedics protocols are to haul babies. The problem with doing that is that it messes up the scene. And I make an argument to paramedics that and they say, well, first off, our number one goal is patient care. Okay, I agree. We'll come back to that. Then I get them to admit many times that they know the baby's dead. The baby's in full rigor. They know the baby's dead. There's nothing they can do, but they want to present a gallant effort to the parents that they are doing everything that they can do to save their child's life. And with that, they don't want to face the parents, let the docs at the ER face the parents. Well, my problem with that is when you go back to their first priority is patient care, then I make the argument that yes, if there is any possible chance that you can save this child's life, then absolutely do that. But if you actually are concerned about patient care, then getting the answers as to why this child is no longer alive, patient care should extend to that as well, right? So you can't use the argument that you haul a dead baby because of patient care. You're doing it because you don't want to face the parents, or your protocols say just jump and go. Very inappropriate. My scene is messed up. Evidence can be lost. Hours can go by between notifications and getting back to the house because we have to go to the hospital first. So I can't change protocol for EMS. I do wish they would think more of it. They say, well, we're not police. We don't care. We do our thing. Well, they should care because, again, patient care is patient care even after death. But that happens. Also, if an officer is on the scene, a patrol officer doesn't roll on every ambulance call. But if they would, in some cases, in smaller regions and things like that, they roll. They know the baby is dead, but the ambulance is hauling it anyway. You do have the ability to stop that, by the way. You deal with your own command staff on that. But if you know the baby's dead, and you know the baby's dead, then you can stop the ambulance from hauling that baby. But that's something you deal with your command staff on. But maybe the first officer stays on the scene. So they're going to secure that scene because they know in a few minutes when that baby gets to the hospital, the doctor's going to say, why'd you bring this baby here? It's dead. Well, now they've still secured the scene so that the scene is secure. So again, think about that for your protocols. Think about that in how you do things in your area. Unlike most death investigations, the decedent, the infant, which is decedent, will likely be moved after discovery. It's very rare that someone finds grandpa dead in their bed and they scoop him up and go running down the hall to the living room where they lay him on the couch and call 911. Grandpa stays in his bed. Of course, infants are smaller and more portable, and so they're picked up and moved from room to room, or they're taken out of the house or run to the neighbor's house or whatever. So there are different locations where that child has been. Maybe the child was in bed asleep in his crib. Well, now the child is at the neighbor's house with mom on the couch, right? So it's important for the investigators to initially find out where the infant or the child has been. Where are they now? Where were they found? And was there anything in the middle? They're at the hospital. They've been pronounced dead at the hospital. The ambulance picked them up at the neighbor's house because mom ran over to the neighbor's house and they called 911 from there. But the baby was found in mom's house in the baby's crib. Well, you've got 3 locations of possible evidence. The crib and the environment in the home where the baby was found. Mom went over to the neighbor's house and there maybe took off the baby's clothes or changed the baby's clothes or cleaned the baby up in some way, waiting for the ambulance to get there. Not in a criminal way to hide evidence, but in a, there's stuff on the baby's face, we need to get it off, or there's puke on the onesie, let's change it. So now that's all left in the floor. And then they're at the hospital, and now you have the actual body, the baby at the hospital. When you first get to the scene, you need to start asking those questions quickly to start knowing where these locations may be, because there's evidence, possible evidence, of the cause and manner at each location. So when you walk through the house, you want to make sure you're looking for environmental conditions. We're going to talk about that more as well. Initially get to the house, look for environmental conditions. So initial walkthrough, locate the first responder and or lead investigator. Talked about that. Determine the location where the infant was first discovered dead or unresponsive. Might have been outside, might have been in the crib, might have been in the kitchen, might have been in a car, but where were they first found? Where was the infant last known alive? And where was the location the infant was placed or the child was placed? That's going to be up for reenactment later. Also, during your walkthrough, identify any physical, fragile evidence. So physical evidence would be something that would be a weapon or something that could be used against a child. Fragile evidence would be like a spot of blood or a damp spot on the mattress or a little bit of puke or mucus or something like that that could be easily cleaned up or lost. Maybe not on purpose, but it could just be wiped off if someone brushes against something. Be looking in the area where the child was discovered with a critical eye for these things, and make sure that if you do locate a spot of blood or a little bit of vomit on clothes or on the crib rail or something, you protect that so it does not get wiped away. So when you initially walk through the scene, you're looking for that. You're also looking for physical living conditions, right? Most of us have been around for a while, have been in houses where dogs and cats are allowed to pee on the floor. And as you walk through, you're squishing in the carpet. Well, that's an environmental problem, right? Maybe there's heat source issues. Maybe you could have a hypothermia situation because the baby got too cold in the wintertime. But what are the environmental conditions? Are the outlet plates on the wall? Do they have big dogs or cats? Cats are known to, especially in colder times, that they'll sleep on the infant's chest. Sometimes they're wanting to lick the milk and stuff off the infant's lips. But they may curl up and lay there because it's warm. Well, an infant that can't move their head and a cat lies on them could very easily asphyxiate them. So look on the baby's clothes for if you see cats or signs of cats in the house. Is there any cat hair on the baby's front side of their sleeper? Or in the crib itself, right? Has a cat been in contact with the baby? Things like that are important because you make note of it. It may come to nothing later, but making note of these initial observations, then you can start asking questions as to what's next. What's next? What's next? And as with any crime scene, and this is, remember, we don't talk about crime scenes for the parents, but parents aren't here, so let's talk about the scene. Let's talk about crime scene. Cooperation is key among differing agencies. You have to have a good working relationship with your social services, with your medical examiner, coroner, police officers, maybe the sheriff's department versus a police department, because maybe your police department is small and you want to use some resources from the state or from the sheriff's department. Cooperation is key. But with child death, this cooperation is ever more important because it can become strained. Remember, emotions are high, there's a lot of things going on, and because it's a strained case, because people are demanding answers in some ways, if there's already a fracture in some relationships between key agencies, it can become worse during these. So keep that in mind. Try to keep your relationships with your agencies good at all times. And then when you have a strained case, then at least it won't break. But cooperation in these cases, in all death cases, obviously, are very, very important. Infant death, even more so. These scenes need to be secured, and no one actively involved in the investigation needs to stay outside. So if it's cold, wet, and rainy, you can't make the parents stand out in the yard. I get that. But maybe we move them to a front living room that we don't think's involved. Maybe we move them to a garage or into another car or something. But we don't want people in the residence or in the area standing around that are not involved. We don't want police officers standing around in there. We don't want parents or caregivers or other families standing around in there. Number one, evidence can get lost and messed up. But also, when we investigate a case, we will talk to each other about what we see, or, hey, I found this, or scenarios, and look things. You don't want the parents to hear this. Because number one, it can be detrimental to them. We're talking about things that can really upset them. But also, if they did do something wrong, then they hear our conversation and they can then guide their answers to what you are already thinking, right? So we want them out of the house, out of earshots, okay? Cooperation with coroners and medical examiners. Coroners and medical examiners, they're in charge of the body and determination of cause and manner. Law enforcement is in charge of the scene. And evidence interpretation can belong to both. Now, again, this is a conversation about cooperation. And there are many places where the coroners and the law enforcement agencies may not get along very well. Some of that may be for political reasons. Some of it may be that the coroner in some states are not required to have initial training or even ongoing training that much. And they are approaching the coroner position with less professionalism as they should. So the police agency sees this and realizes that this guy is just a body snatcher, and when we're done, we'll call him to come pick the body up. And some coroners, that's all they do. Now, that's wrong. That is not state statute, and they should be replaced as coroner because that's not their job. I'm very strong on that. So the coroner should know what their job is, and they should be allowed to be in the scene and to do their job in the scene with the cooperation of law enforcement. But the only way you're going to get that cooperation is if coroners are trained in how to do an investigation and they have a predetermined cooperation with law enforcement. Here's what I need. Here's what you need. How can we work together to do this? You're going to want time of death, infant death or adult death. You're going to want time of death. If the body is still there, the sooner you allow a coroner who is well trained to that body, they're going to be able to give you an initial time frame of time of death. Now, we can't do what Ducky does in NCIS and stick a probe in their liver and say they died at 2:12 a.m. That's not possible. But we can give you a time frame. Now, our time frame can be better defined later with more information. But if I can look at the body and put my hands in the body, I can tell you some things about a possible time frame. If I know the environment the child was found in and things like that, you're going to want that as a police officer. But if you don't let the coroner get in for hours and hours and hours and hours, then you're going to ask them questions, and it's going to be harder for them to maybe answer those questions. Neither agency can properly nor legally complete an investigation according to law without mutual respect and cooperation. Coroners have their job and responsibility. Police have their job and responsibility. They have to determine what happened to this baby and if there's any criminal prosecution that should be done, and that can only be done by working together. Don't rush these scenes. When you first get to the scene, everything should slow down. Remember, we have a tendency to rush them. Getting in a hurry causes mistakes. Don't rush them. Slow down. And all death scenes should take a long time. But now when you if you have an infant death in the next month or two, remember, okay, stop. Everybody stop. Take a deep breath. Slow down. What's our first step? Let's do this very slow and methodically. Let's not miss anything. Let's not let our emotions get out of control here. Now you know it. Now watch for it. There's no reason to rush any death scene, especially when it comes to an infant death. There's a lot of information that you've got to obtain. These scenes should take a long time. Interviewing the parents, the SUDI form alone can take an hour. The photographs and the investigation, you only get one chance at your first chance. You only get one chance at your first chance. everything else you come back to has changed. Evidence isn't as good. Things obviously are wrong and different. So you only get one chance. So make it the best you can. If you're there at that house interacting with this scene for 5 or 6 hours, that is not unheard of. Now, maybe it's a more simple incident and maybe it's only 2 or 3 hours. But it certainly should be as long as it needs to be to make sure you have all the information documented and all the information you need. Because once you leave that house or that riverbank or that car or wherever that infant was found, and then you may also have another location, then once you leave it, it's done. You going back is, you might find some evidence, but now it's all questioned in court because of the break in time. So stay there absolutely as long as you need to get everything that you need so that you don't lose that, because if we rush it, we certainly have the tendency to lose it. Witness statements. Now, witness is anyone that may have information. So you as an investigator are going to be talking to a lot of witnesses. You've got family, you've got people that live in the home, you've got people that may have been in the home during that time, neighbors, you may talk to neighbors about, do you hear abuse? What do you hear from the neighbors? Things like that. School teachers, Sunday school teachers, medical professionals, anybody that has any information about this child or the services received by this child is a potential witness, and you'll want to talk to every one of them. At some point, you may talk to all of these people. Now, keep in mind that witnesses will lie and they will leave out information. We know that. We know that witnesses sometimes lie on purpose and sometimes they lie on accident. But be sure to get all the contact information from the person you're talking to so that you can contact them later if you have more information. A trick I learned a long time ago is someone gives me their cell phone number. I take out my cell phone, I hit *67, I call them, and if their cell phone don't ring in their pocket, I want to know where their cell phone is because they may have given me the wrong number. Or, it answers, McDonald's, can I help you? Well, wait a minute, you've just given me the wrong number. And that can happen. I promise you that happens. Get them laid down to a story. Don't correct them. Let them just tell their whole story. It'd be nice if you was able to record this, but let them tell the whole story. And then if you have questions, you can interrupt, or you can go back, instead of interrupting, go back and ask clarifying questions. If you can get them to write a written statement, that is 100% the best. Number one, you've got them laid down to a written event, but also that can be analyzed for what may or may not be totally truthful in that statement. If someone lies to you and you can prove that they lied, that's great information, because when you go back and talk to them again, not only are you know in your mind that they're lying, you can now present them with the facts. I know you're lying about this and this. Here's how I can prove it. Now I need you to start telling me the truth, because there can be charges, there can be things with the prosecutor to deal with them and things like that. But document what they say, make sure everything is in your report and in your notes of what they said so that you can start correlating all this information together. A little bit about cognitive psychology. Totally don't have the time to go into all of it, but we have to know how memory works. And I need you to understand that stress, trauma, fear, anxiety, all of this can affect their memory. So a caregiver might not be lying to you on purpose, right? They literally might not remember every detail because their baby just died and they're under a lot of stress and there's all these people in their house asking them all these questions, right? So the aim of cognitive psychology is to assist them in telling a story. And, you don't necessarily say at first to start at 6 p.m. and work forward, just tell me what happened. They'll tell you what happened the best they can tell you, and then you can go back and ask clarifying questions. After the first run through, you might go back then and say, okay, let's start at 6 p.m. last night. After you fed the baby this last bottle at 6 p.m., then you say what? You laid the baby down. Let's start from there. Now you can pinpoint these things a little closer, but don't give them a time frame at first. Just let them just say, tell me what happened, and let them start where they want to start. Of course, begin with open-ended questions, which urges the witness to recall everything in chronological order. Then the witness recount the incident as fully as possible. Then ask the witness to change perspective and describe the incident. Again, that's where we go back to say, start at 10 p.m., start at 6 p.m., start when you first got home. They've told the whole story, but then you go back and clarify some things. Now, let's talk about distortion. A true witness does desire to tell the truth. However, as I said earlier, things can happen and they can forget things. What you as an investigator have to be cautious about is not changing their mind. So let's say, for instance, that there's a green onesie lying on the floor. And you're talking to the parents, and the parents state that they had undressed the child. The child was wearing a gray onesie. They'd undressed the child and put the onesie on the floor. And you say, well, are you sure it was gray, or is it the green one here? If they think it's gray, let them say gray. They might be lying, or they simply might they might forget, or they might even see that as gray instead of green. Just let them tell their story. Then you could clarify, is this the ones that you're talking about? Yeah, that's it. That's where I put it. Okay, you don't have to clarify their color. Okay, they've identified that being the one. And also, when we're talking about how did you place the child? Well, I placed the child on their back. Well, if that's what they say, then that's what they say. Well, you, in your mind, you see that there's a wet spot on the mattress. You see some evidence on the child's face as far as lividity goes, but, the pressure points in the nose and the chin. And then you might clarify them. Are you sure you didn't do this? Or sure you didn't do that? Let them tell their story without you correcting them.
All right, I'm right back with you here on the other side. I hope you enjoyed that training. Lots of information there. You can go back and listen to some more of it and take some notes if you didn't catch everything. Remember, that is part of a full course. You can find that in the link at the show notes down below. If you need anything out of us, I say this at the top of the show as well, but if you need anything out of me or the Academy, just send us an email. We want to interact with you as much as we can and give you what you need. If you're needing special training, if you're needing any questions out of us, something like that, we're here to help you. Also, remember, if you haven't already subscribed to the newsletter, you need to do that. You can find that at deathinvestigatormagazine.com, and you can subscribe to the newsletter. It's free. It comes out every single month, and it's a magazine-style, interactive magazine-style newsletter, which I think you'll really, really enjoy. We've got a lot of positive feedback from that. Again, remember, what do I want you to do? I want you to be a blessing to someone in your life. It could be a stranger. It could be somebody you know. It could be your enemy, the person that you would just as soon do negative bodily injury to. Find a way to bless that person. Find a way to bless that person and make that person's life better. And I promise you, by pouring into somebody else's life, even if it's somebody you don't like, your life will be blessed and you'll be better off for it. Till next week, everybody, be safe.
Thanks for listening to Coroner Talk, a DSPN media production. Visit our website at coronertalk.com. And be sure to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/coronertraining. 3617 1024 scene en route to morgue.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.